We're going to get ready for TM. Also have a positive message because he was somewhere where white supremacists were. And now he coming here to speak to us against white supremacy. So it's always good to hear the experience of an individual that knows what they're talking about. In order for you to know what you're talking about, you got to be living what you're talking about. Now, TM, I don't know what you're going to talk about. I know it's going to be tight, long as it's right. And like I said, give your background of where you're from and what the thoughts you used to have and all that. I know you know how to set it up. He going to mess you up. Here you go.
Thank you, Dale. So, hello everybody. Thank you everybody for being here today. Thank you, Rolanda, Tasha Lester, and Twan Lester of Care Now Food Pantry for organizing this the 4th year in a row. Those two are doing this by themselves every year. So please an applause for Rolanda and Twan. So, and thank you, Dale, for introducing me. So he said something that some of you might already know and some don't. I come from a place where people are that usually would not be on the stage today. I used to be a white supremacist. But I need to say this journey ended for me. We'll continue after this journey ends here. One second. This journey in this very strange world of hate was over about 20 years ago. Something happened to me, but I will talk about that a little bit more in the speech. So let's talk about today and what led today, why today is so important. Let's do a little bit of time traveling. So on August 28th, 1963, a young preacher from Atlanta, Georgia climbed up the marble stairs of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. to describe his vision of a better America. He was not unknown, and many in the country would rather keep him from climbing up these stairs, because him climbing up these stairs, sharing his vision, also meant that his people would follow him and his vision, and that they would also climb up, not the Lincoln Memorial, but in the country, demanding the same rights as those who would rather keep them down. Dreaming that a black man once could be president, that a black woman once could be vice president. But it was 1963, and many white people would rather see this young man from Atlanta, Georgia, where his father preached at Ebenezer Baptist Church, silenced. Because they were afraid that he would be successful. This young Baptist minister, born on January 15th, held one of the most famous speeches in history that day. I have a dream. And it was not only the dream, it was the necessity of uplifting his people and to demand a better America for them, but also the dream of a peaceful living with those who were vilifying him that very same moment. When Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. climbed up these marble stairs, he shared his dream of unity, equality, peace, and harmony. He said, I have a dream that one day, little black boys and girls will be holding hands with little white boys and girls. Unfortunately, not everybody shared this dream with Dr. King. Not everybody in the white community and not everybody in the black community. But a strong civil rights movement fought for the demanded and deserved rights, and battles were won in this long war for freedom. Say, war for freedom? You ask why? Weren't black people free since 1865? Or technically even 2.5 years later, or earlier in 1863 when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. And here stands a young Dr. King before 250,000 supporters, opening his speech and noting that exactly 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, black people were still not free. And I remember 2 years ago, here in Holly Springs, I saw a young girl with a t-shirt in the park over there saying, free-ish since 1865. And I think many white people wouldn't understand what the t-shirt actually says or what it means. But it's a direct reference to Dr. King's speech. Well, this is exactly what the Emancipation Proclamation did, only. Black people were free-ish, sorta free. You know, white people thought as long as you do what we say and as long as you stay in your place, you're free. And that was the case in 1865. And that was the case even after the end of segregation. But after every little victory, it looks so good, but the way is still so long. And the war for freedom is still going on. Now, you have heard a lot of speeches today and last year and all over the country. You ask, these are small victories. How much should we recognize these little victories? Is it enough? When the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, for example, I heard it last year on the stage that Abraham Lincoln's intentions were not exactly honest and that he would have saved the Union without saving a single slave or freeing a single slave if he could. Well, he indeed said that. But he was also ready to free the slaves to save the Union. And most other white people at the time would rather let America go down than free a single slave. So it was still a lot. But 1 year after Dr. King climbed up these stairs at the Lincoln Memorial, in 1964, the Civil Rights Act was signed. Another little victory. But it's yet not enough. Still free-ish. Black people still couldn't vote yet. Then 1965, the Voting Rights Act was signed. It's 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. So far for free. So it is so little, it is so late. Always seems so late. I hear this phrase so often on TV and everywhere. And I will remind you of it again in a little bit. Because it always seems so little, it always seems so late. Last year, Juneteenth was declared a national holiday. That was late too. It came really late. And how meaningful is that? Or was it just a farce to keep black Americans calm when their children are murdered by racist cops? Well, it's just that we can't measure these acts from over 157 years ago or from 1964, from 1965 with today's standards. And if I talk about today's standards, when I say that I'm talking about my standards and where I want to see this country, where I want to see white people and where I want to see black people. So whenever these little victories were achieved, it always seemed so late, but it finally happened. Too little? Maybe. But what could those heroes in the civil rights movement achieve? Dr. King and his associates, the Freedom Riders, their white and Jewish allies. Now, let's forward a little bit, especially in the 1960s and 70s. The 60s were great, civil rights movement, a lot was achieved. And then in the 70s, I think America became lazy when it came to civil rights. Just take a look at Hollywood and the media. I think Hollywood did a lot to address injustice and racism in the 1970s. TV shows, movies. But in the 1980s, it looked much different. Hollywood movies would show you the white cop and the black cop and they're being best friends, and their kids play together in the backyard. I don't know under what rock that screenwriter has lived, but this is not the America I saw when I moved here from Germany in 2012. You know, me growing up, seeing the United States, America was always depicted as the heroes who, pardon my French, kicked the Nazis' ass and who overcame segregation and racism in 1965. That's how it was shown to me, and a lot of people overseas. But Americans, white and black, seem to have given up fighting like they did in the 1960s because it seemed like it's enough. The job was done. Black people are free-ish. Well, a black man has become president in 2008, so this can't be a racist country, can it? And then I moved to Memphis, Tennessee. And I saw how the black neighborhoods look like. I saw how some of the black schools look like. And I found out what redlining means. And I found out how my black friends were just treated different from me. So Hollywood has lied to me. It made me believe that Dr. King's dream had become true. I have a dream that one day little black boys and girls will be holding hands with little white boys and girls. Sure, we have desegregated schools per law. But look here at Holly Springs. Sure, black and white kids play together in sports teams, But it was just last year here in Marshall County that a black child was called the N-word in a sports game by a white child, and nothing happened. And it is here in Marshall County as well, where white little black boys and girls do not play in the same backyard with little white boys and girls. Well, they could per law, but they don't see it often. I would love to, but where do we begin? I began with myself. We opened our backyard. My house is open anytime, where little black boys and girls can play in the same backyard with little white boys and girls. And I also decided not to buy in these stereotypes anymore. I remember when we handed out flyers in Orange Mound, me and my wife in Memphis a couple of years ago for a project we had, and the sun went down, and I kept knocking at the doors of black homes to invite people to our event. I was telling people afterwards about that. They was like, "Are you crazy?" I said, "Why? You can't go after dark in the hood and knock at black people's doors." Why not? That's exactly what I did. And look, I'm still alive. I didn't hear a single bad word. The worst that happened was that some people didn't open their doors. And you know why? I fully understood why. For so long, white people have used black people for their purposes. Even when it comes to anti-racism. I would have been leery too, maybe not open the door. I get it. And for so long, white people have been the ones telling black people how to lead this war for freedom. And sorry, my white friends, we need to step back and let black Americans lead that war. White people need to be allies that black Americans can count on. White people will understand when black men and women are murdered by racist cops, that black parents are scared to let their sons out of the house, that replying to Black Lives Matter with slogans like "All Lives Matter" is not helpful, nor showing empathy. All it is ignorance. But now, hear me out. Black and white Americans. This is tricky. There's a reason for this, and there's also a solution for this. And don't get me wrong. I don't want to tell my black brothers and sisters, I don't want to tell you how to fight your war. But I can give you advice how to win over all these All Lives Matter people who are saying that they're not racist, who are saying that there's no white privilege, and who are saying that they're not racist. And you know, I believe when they're saying they're not racist, because that's by their definition, because media and the Hollywood has taught us how racists look like. They have a hood and hate black people. That's what a racist is. That's what we think about racism. But that's not true. These people don't lie when they say they don't hate black Americans. I believe them when they say they don't wish black Americans any harm. But by ignoring open racism in this country, by ignoring police brutality, by racist cops, by ignoring that black Americans still have a disadvantage on the housing market because of redlining and because they're black, then you do something that is racist, even though you don't think you're racist. By ignoring that black Americans often don't have access to the same education, also thanks to redlining and decades of falling housing values in their neighborhoods, which made it impossible to send their kids to college and to inherit a nice house, thanks to lower taxes in these redlining neighborhoods, which means there's less money for education. And this is why black schools in Memphis look the way they look like. I've seen it, and I wanted to know why they look like how they look like. And this is also what I mean when you talk about white privilege. This is what we talk about when we say systemic racism. Now let's see what Wikipedia says about systemic racism. Systemic racism is institutional racism, also known as systemic racism, a form of racism that is embedded in the laws and regulations of society and organization. It manifests as discrimination in areas such as criminal justice, employment, housing, healthcare, education, and political representation. Now the problem is that the media makes these people, these white people that don't see that, believe that systemic racism means that white people in this country have a racist mindset, which is not true. And these white people will be in defense mode and generally say, but I don't hate black people, therefore there can't be systemic racism, so therefore it must be a lie. And it's the same media that makes people believe that Planned Parenthood is an abortion clinic, not a program that helps young women to get educated so they don't get pregnant in the first place. It's the same media that makes people believe that white privilege means that white people never had to work hard and were born with a silver spoon, instead of what it really means. Dear white people, white privilege is not about you having an advantage. Don't make everything about you. White privilege is the lack of the disadvantage that black Americans have because of the color of their skin. This is what white privilege is. But I get it, it's hard to grasp when you never not had it. And it's hard when the media is telling you that you have to be ashamed because you have it, that you have to feel guilty because you have it, because you've got it. Sounds like a disease, right? You've got it, white privilege. It's embedded in this country and it's part of systemic racism I was talking about. Well, no one likes to have a disease. I don't like it either, but I've got it too. So, and for a long time, I believed in the same things. The things I just listed, and worse, much worse. Again, I used to be a white supremacist. So we're coming to a close here soon. Something changed me. Someone changed me. A man of another religion, a Muslim. People I once hated made my hate crumble when he showed me nothing but compassion and love. I started to listen just to find out how big the commonalities were when I thought we had nothing in common because he looked so different, he prayed different, he talked different. We had nothing in common, I thought. But I found out that we have a lot in common. And I couldn't hate the man anymore. And after a long journey, which made me eventually move to the USA, I was allowed to explore all these groups I once hated. The Muslim community, the black community, the Jewish community. And I thank all these communities for letting me explore them and find out. Get rid of my stereotypical thinking and my prejudices. And how much common I have with these people, and how important things like skin color was, nationality or religion. And because they listened to me and my fears, I listened to theirs. And I acknowledged white privilege, I acknowledged systemic racism, and so on. It took a while. It was a step-by-step process since 2002. You know, people radicalize slowly. It's like you walk 10 miles into a forest, but it also takes 10 miles to get out of that forest again. And as I said before, we often hear it in the media when someone who was a hater, when someone who did something racist, Islamophobic, or anti-Semitic, when they finally have doubts, when they finally admit that they made a mistake here and there, they will get a backlash, and everybody's saying it's too little and too late. And you remember I said that earlier, too little, too late, is it? Let me tell you one thing. It's never too little, it's never too late. Not for them, not for these victories, and not to change. Because if it was, I wouldn't stand here on this stage today. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, show your love for the one and only Brother TM. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for your love and your passion and your commitment to make our community better by being as we all need to be, working together in unity. One more time for